What does it entail? It entails understanding how the brain develops, acquires speech, how the brain acquires language, and exaggerating and emphasizing those areas, making it easier for the child to pick those things up.
Hello and welcome to Special Moms Africa podcast. Real talk on special needs parenting. I am hosting you today and my name is Tonye Faloki Ekezie. And I'm here with the beautiful, the wonderful Obafemi Kemi Luther, who is joining me here to pepper us a bit. So, as always, we talk about the special needs life, how it is bringing up these kids, the ins, the outs, the ups, the downs, and we just bear it all here on this show. Today, our topic is about speech and language. And this is a really broad topic. So we're going to try and cover as much as we can in the 30 minutes we have for this show. Today we have an amazing guest in the studio. We have Dr. Helen Nwanze, who's a speech and language pathologist and child or developmental psychologist. That's a lot. So before we meet Dr. Helen Nwanze, let me just tell you a little bit about her and what she does. She is a specialist in developmental disabilities. She holds degrees in speech pathology and developmental psychology. Her doctorate degree is in applied developmental psycholinguistics. I could barely say that, which is the study of language acquisition, use, disorder, and remediation. I think I need to go back to school. Dr. Nwanze was a senior research fellow with the College of Medicine, University of Lagos. She has published over 20 research papers in both local and international scientific journals on the subject of autism and other developmental disabilities. We can already hear Obafemi Kemi doing her breathing, which means this is a preparing episode. Until recently, she ran speech therapy clinics for the Lagos University Teaching Hospital, Idi Araba. Thank you. She now consults with a number of private organizations. Dr. Nwanze coordinates acceleration therapy, an organization dedicated to providing early intervention for developmentally delayed children. Welcome, Dr. Nwanze.
Thank you so much for having me.
So let's kind of deconstruct a lot of that. Let's go back to what got you on this path in the first place.
Very interesting question. I actually went to university to study psychology, but as you know, in the United States, you are expected, particularly in your first year, to take electives. And I took an elective which was Introduction to Speech and Language Pathology. Mm-hmm. And I fell in love with that course. So I decided to just double major. So I double majored in psychology and speech and language pathology.
Wow. So from that initial kind of undergrad elective, how did you move to actually saying, this is my vision, this is the thing I'm going to be doing for the rest of my life or for a major part of my life?
I came back to Nigeria to discover that very little was being done on the ground, particularly in the area of speech and language pathology. I got work at LUTH, the Lagos University Teaching Hospital, and found that a lot of the kids that I was seeing had, they had speech and language challenges, but they also had developmental disorders, which were not really being addressed. So that, you fit either in one box or the other. You have a physical disability, you have a speech challenge. There was nothing that was just globally dealing with all the different areas. So that was because I had to deal with a lot of areas at the same time. That's what actually got me into developmental disabilities.
Now, for our listeners and us in the studio, you have to take us back to school. So we're going to ask, what exactly is speech and language pathology?
Speech and language pathology is the management of all disorders of speech, whether it's in children or in adults. You know, you can have stammering, stuttering, cluttering. You can there are even adults that have strokes and lose their speech because of stroke. So every aspect of speech disorders, developmental disorders, my child is 3, my child is 4, my child is not saying anything, hearing challenges, you know, you can't hear words so that you can't say them properly. So that it's the whole gamut of speech and language, but the disorder of it, that's why it's called pathology.
Pathology, because it's such a huge field.
Yes.
And it encompasses so much.
Yes. When I was in school, we were told never call yourself a speech therapist, because in America at that time, therapists had certain laws that governed them. If you're a therapist, you can't see more than a certain number of kids and so on. So that's why my own field swung towards that pathology rather than therapist. It was a political decision.
Yes, we seem to be dealing with a lot of political decisions that are affecting things. Yes, such as COVID vaccine. Anyway, moving on from that.
Swiftly.
Now, we've broken down one side. What is developmental psychology?
Developmental psychology, you know, from birth or even from inside the mother's womb, a fetus develops. So the psychological development, the mental capacity, mental development from child to adulthood, really.
So, listeners out there, how I know Dr. Helen Nwanze is because she actually attended to my daughter Simone, who has a diagnosis of Down syndrome. And Simone has developmental delays, cognitive delays, and she had issues with her speech and language, which is honestly part and parcel of that diagnosis. And she really took Simone under her wing and was able to connect with her in a way that few people have. Now, why I think so is because Dr. Helen Nwanze, what do you call it? Do you say that you're legally blind? Do you say that you're partially sighted? Because I see you as a kind of superhero.
Okay, partially sighted.
Now, can you explain what partially sighted is?
I don't have 20/20 vision.
So you can kind of hear Dr. Nwanze has just such a positive spirit. She's a smiley kind of person. And she is just
I didn't know.
so positive in a way that connects with children. And I really, in my opinion, don't listen to me, but in my opinion, I feel that her being partially sighted is kind of her superpower because it engages other senses. There's other ways she can attend to these children. She can feel them. She can, connect with their essence. It's like magic to me, and it's such a blessing. And it again shows that whatever challenge you have, you can actually find a way to excel and to, I wouldn't say conquer, or even overcome, but just thrive within what you are, and it just that acceptance. And it's been a great example for us in our household, and shows how you can advocate just by your very existence, just by your very being.
I think for me, it's even more remarkable. I mean, as we're here in the studio, I've been watching Dr. Nwanze, and to me, it's like I didn't realize that she. So because she's engaging with me, like she sees me, and she can see me as a person. But I was going to ask you a question, Dr. Nwanze. In Nigeria, has it been challenging for you being partially sighted and then being a therapist at the same time? Do you ever have any discriminations? I go straight to the meat.
Okay. Perhaps I'm a bit thick-skinned, but I've not really noticed it. I only remember, in all the years of practice, and maybe so many kids, maybe one or two people saying, well, initially I was a bit concerned because I heard that you had some visual challenges. And I was wondering how you'd be able to work with my child. But generally speaking, I have not. Maybe because, like you, a lot of people may not realize.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
You understand that?
Yeah, because it's not so obvious. So, let's get back to the speech and language therapy, because some people, and I hear this on a weekly basis, they often think that, why am I even bothering? Is there any difference? I'm not noticing any difference. Why are you always repeating? Those are the kind of things we hear, that I hear from other parents, and I explain to them, look, with my child, this is what you're doing. It's consistency, it's repetition, it's part of it. So what does a typical kind of, if it's possible to even say, what does a typical session look like? And does it really make a difference to a child's progress?
Definitely, because, I have always had a preference for working with children with language delays. Even though, as we said at the introduction, speech and language pathology encompasses even adults with issues. But we've worked with a lot of children who began with no speech at all, who have progressed into speech. What does it entail? It entails understanding how the brain acquires speech, how the brain acquires language, and exaggerating and emphasizing those areas, making it easier for the child to pick those things up.
It's amazing to think that a child who's nonverbal can, given enough time and given the attention of the right therapy that's appropriate for them, they can actually develop speech and language and understand how to communicate, both receptive and expressive language. So, for example, I want to kind of get into the nitty-gritty. What does a typical session look like? How do you break it up? How does it start? The start, the middle, the finish. There's a certain, story arc or flow for a session.
Okay. Of course, it's very individualized. You have to know what gets your child going, what excites that child, what stimulates that particular individual child.
Why would you say that?
Because, you learn better when you're motivated. Motivation is a major key to therapy. Enthusiasm, so that you have to get the child enthusiastic about what they're working on, what you're trying to get them to do, excited about it. And then, if you have a child, remember there's a time Simone was interested in playing with balls.
Yeah.
And we would, throw the ball, get the ball, where's the ball?
For sponsorship enquiries, please contact specialmomsafrica@gmail.com.